Hello everyone, welcome back to On The Fly. Today we'll be taking a look at Day 3 of the World Junior Championships currently happening in Gothenburg, Sweden. So taking a look at the scores from today's games, we had 2 games on tap. They weren't necessarily your best of games, and this will probably be a shorter video. But we have 2 games. So the first game was a blowout with the US beating the Swiss 11-3. What I will say is this score doesn't really dictate the game. The US played great. I made fun of them in the last video. They played great today, so hats off to them for bouncing back after a tough Norway game where they only won 4-1 against Norway. But at the same time, they bounced back. They played really well, so good for them. They finally got their boys are back in town for that. And then Switzerland played pretty good. I was sort of surprised. The score, in my opinion, doesn't dictate how Switzerland played at all. They had plenty of chances, and I think when we look at what Switzerland can do, I sort of mentioned in yesterday's video, they were having trouble getting to the middle of the ice. In today's game, they really started to push towards the middle. Lots of high-quality chances, just couldn't bury it. So I think when we look at what Switzerland needs to do, especially as they start to head towards the relegation stage, they will play Norway on the 31st. Whether or not they can figure out how to get that into an actual prime scoring chance, if they can do that, then there's no doubt for me that Switzerland will be the 4th place team in Group B, which is going to be crucial for them. Obviously, as a team that's trying to avoid relegation, that's what they need to do. They need to beat Norway, and then from there on out, let's be honest, that's probably not what they're looking at. Switzerland isn't a team that's going to go very far in this tournament just because of where they're seated, the way they play. But they will play a team like Canada. They will play a team like Sweden. That'll be tomorrow's game. That'll decide the top of Group A. But we'll get to that in a little bit. And speaking of Sweden, let's take a look at the next game. 5-0 Sweden over Germany. In this game, it was actually a pretty well-played game from both sides. Germany looked really good through 2 periods, and then the 3rd period just sort of fell apart. They ran out of gas. Coming off of a really impressive game against Finland yesterday as well. I made a video on that. Just sort of the way that they were able to turn it around, I was surprised. They didn't show any sort of fatigue until that 3rd period. In the 3rd period, they just fell apart, which, I mean, makes sense because, you know, you're playing a back-to-back coming off of a game where you were playing a team that was, no offense, a lot better than them. And once again, they hadn't won 25 games in a row. Sweden was no different. They had it, and nonetheless, though, overall, pretty good game by Germany. Sweden, once again, took care of business. They didn't really do anything that was out of character for them. They played a good game. They stuck it out. No real high-quality chances from Germany. They had a couple of good chances, not necessarily your best of best. But nonetheless, Sweden played a good game. Germany played a good game. So today's hockey necessarily wasn't the best of scoring games. Obviously, there was pretty high discrepancy there. But at the end of the day, both teams played some pretty good hockey today, and I was impressed with how both teams played. Taking a look at the news from today, the boys are back in town for the US, that's their goal song, but also sort of represents what's going on. They're back from their unfortunate, terrible, however you want to describe it, game against Norway. They figured it out, they turned up the notch and then against Switzerland, and that's how the game ended 11-3. Tough luck for the Swiss having to play the US. It happens every year where every one of these teams gets to a point where, you know, they just play a team that's better than them, and that's the end result. For the Switzerland, that was today. As for Germany, at the Finnish fallout, coming off of a really joyous game for them yesterday, that's what tends to happen. You run out of energy, and unfortunately for them, just could not pull it off. Then Stenberg's sensational hat-trick for Otto Stenberg today. He was really good as well, so I was impressed by sort of the way he played. He took care of it on both sides, scoring a hat-trick as well. Can't ask for much more out of Otto Stenberg, so he was sensational today. Taking a look now at the standings, so this is where it's going to get a little bit interesting. We have Group A, so we have Canada and Sweden both in 1st place. They will play tomorrow to probably resolve the top of Group A. I don't see either team having too much problem. Sweden will play Finland on the 31st. Canada will play Germany. I expect both those games to resolve themselves in a Canada win, Sweden win. So I'd assume at least that the winner of tomorrow's game will take the top of Group A, play probably a team like Switzerland, and then the 2nd place will play likely Czechia, could be Slovakia, could be the US. Hard to tell right now, but I'd expect that team to be Czechia. And then in 3rd place, we have Germany with 1 win and 1 regulation loss. I'd expect them to beat Latvia. That game is going to be very, very important as well, because if Germany doesn't beat Latvia, then it comes into what would likely be, because Finland will play Latvia tomorrow. Finland beats Latvia. Then you have a three-way tie if Latvia beats Germany, and then it comes down to point differential. Germany would get screwed out of that because it's between the three teams. Germany only beat Finland by 1, which means that the best they can get is a tie, which would put them in a whole bunch of problems. But that'll be tomorrow's problem. We'll talk a little bit more about that in tomorrow's video, so be sure to come back. And then we'll take a look at the Group B. Slovakia and the U.S., similar position here, both with 6 points. The U.S. still has to play Czechia. That'll come tomorrow as well. So that'll be an interesting game. Czechia's in third. Then Switzerland and Norway are the sort of the tiebreaker. So that's for that relegation spot, who will make the quarterfinals. So that'll be a must-win for them as well. But we'll look at all that in tomorrow's video because that'll be more of an important note. But as we look tomorrow at tomorrow's games, December 29th, we have 4 games on tap, back to the 4-game schedule, with Slovakia playing Norway at 6 a.m. We have Finland and Latvia, so that's sort of mentioned. That's a critical game. If Latvia knocks off Finland, Finland will be in the relegation round, regardless of what happens against Sweden. So that's a really, really interesting point, just because of the tiebreak of how it works. Head-to-head is the first overall. And with that being said, if Germany and Latvia both beat Finland, then they just can't come back. So if Latvia can knock Finland off, Finland will be in the relegation round. But nonetheless, we'll take a look at the next game here, 11 a.m. All times are in Eastern Standard Time. The U.S. will play against the Czechs. That's a big, big game as well. Because, once again, if the Czechs can somehow upset the U.S., I don't expect that to happen. But if they can, then, once again, we're in that sort of three-way tiebreaker role, which might make it an interesting sort of thing. Who knows, though? Then at 1:30 p.m., we have the decider of Group A, likely as well, with Canada and Sweden. That'll be probably your game of the day, right up there with Finland and Latvia. Both teams are playing for their tournament hopes, and Canada and Sweden playing for the top of Group A, playing to be able to have an easier opponent, because if they don't, then once again, we sort of mentioned it, but it could be either a Czech, U.S. or Slovakia. Both teams have looked, all 3 teams rather, have looked pretty good at this tournament. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. Obviously, you want to get the top spot, play the worst team in the other group. And I think it's really important in the case of Group A. But with that being said, if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you really like, consider subscribing. Tell all your friends and comment down below your thoughts on Day 3 of the World Junior Championship. Until next time, see you.